Greetings, kindred spirits. I hope you're all doing well. So far, June has proven to be quite an eventful month, and I think it will continue to be quite eventful throughout. We have already had the full moon lunar eclipse that took place on the 5th of June in Ophiuchus, and Mercury went into shadow on the 2nd and started his actual retrograde on the 18th, which is today actually. I'm recording on the 18th. We have the June solstice coming up on the 20th, which is the summer solstice in the northern hemisphere and the winter solstice in the southern hemisphere. But here in the GMT time zone, the solstice will reach its peak at 22:44. And I think that timing is pretty relevant. 22 and 44 are master numbers, and I just feel that's very relevant for this solstice. So the sun will be at 36 degrees in Taurus in the true lifetime sky, which is actually the last degree of Taurus. So the sun will enter into Gemini on the following day, which is the 21st of June, which is the day of the new moon solar eclipse. So on the whole, and taking everything into consideration, we're still amid a very transformative time. A time of some very eye-opening realizations for some, and a loss of identity or purpose for others. It really will depend on our own individual path and how sensitive we are to energy in this present moment. And to be honest, the present moment is where we really need to be right now, because this year isn't over yet. And being in the present moment is important for us to get grounded and prepared for another major shift of energy that will take place in December. Well, there'll be other shifts going on up until that point. So I recommend that we work on inner peace and balance, because that is very much needed right now. Although we shouldn't blindside ourselves either, which in a way will be hard to do anyway this year, unless we have a really thick skin. This year has been all about inclusion and discernment on an inner level and within the collective's consciousness. Next year will be about adaptability and change in our outer physical world. So the energies coming in at present are trying to get us to focus more on our inner being when it comes to our values, our ideations, and how we can apply them to a world that's in chaos right now. The good thing about the sun being in Taurus this solstice is that he is good at taking his time with things. Slow and steady wins the race when it comes to the Taurian energy. Well, unless you wave a red flag in front of his face. So, we must be careful of being over defensive or impulsive at this time, especially since the Black Moon Lilith is now weaving her magic and casting her shadow between Chiron, the wounded healer, in Pisces, and Uranus, who is in Aries. And that emits quite a revolutionary energy. The Black Moon's transit is pretty erratic. She can swing from forward motion to retrograde mode every other day. So she will be backwards and forwards between Chiron in Pisces and Uranus in Aries for the next month or so. Although she will move on from Chiron, but continue to conjunct Uranus for the rest of this year. So while the Black Moon Lilith and Chiron have been digging up some deep, deep stuff, the Black Moon Lilith and Uranus will kick us into a much more conscious awareness, which can be a very triggering energy. So we must be aware of jumping on bandwagons and stay in our own self-power without fear. And as they will both be conjuncting in the sign of Aries in the true lifetime sky, it looks like freedom of will and independent thinking will be quite a theme. This means that together with the eclipses, a lot of people will be coming into some powerful realizations or a powerful releasing of what no longer serves their highest and best, so that they can build a more solid structure when it comes to boundaries and self-image. This is because next year will be a 5 universal year, which is a very mirroring energy, as well as being the number of change and reproduction. It's also representative of the 5th element, ether, which is the element of Ophiuchus. So it's important that when we are looking into the mirror, we are looking at our own true reflection. Ether is also connected to the dark energy and the dark matter that our astrophysicists are researching quite heavily at the moment, and has caused quite a stir in the scientific community, since they are having to take a more metaphysical approach to the subject. And that's fascinating. I love it. It's strange, but not so strange, that this year we are seeing certain establishments that tend to stick to a very orthodox way of thinking actually considering a more abstract point of view with regards to various different subjects. I'm talking about in the justice system, I'm talking about in the scientific community. Just those two alone are showing signs of kind of a different way of thinking or acting, taking action. So we are actually seeing things occur this year that we would never have imagined would have happened, or could ever have happened. So there is definitely an evolution of concepts going on here, and out of that will come some very beneficial results. Many are coming into their higher calling or realizing their purpose, while others are still working on their own self-improvement or self-realization and coming to terms with what is truly important in their lives. And that will be especially enlightening for those that have been sitting on the fence or confused about their future direction. So whatever the case may be, the enlightenment that is being reached throughout this year will be firing up our inner sacred fire, our passions and our creativity. So watch out for solar plexus activations, especially for those of us that have been in a dark place recently. It's not like we are out of the darkness yet. And when I say dark, I don't mean it in like a demonic or negative sense, although it is classed as a negative energy, because, it does tend to feel a little bit negative when we're going through that energy. But I consider the darkness to be the womb, and in the womb there is always going to be growing pains and discomfort. So this particular solstice is all about just being in the present moment and organising our space, both inwardly and outwardly, to make room for the new to come in. So the new moon solar eclipse takes place in Gemini in the true lifetime sky on the 21st of June at 7:41 in the GMT time zone, at 2:41 in the EDT time zone, and at 16:41 in the AEDT time zone. And the sun and the moon will both be at 0 degrees in Gemini. Again, this is our back to the womb energy. Accepting Gemini is all about a transformation of our self-identity, or what it is we identify with. You know, Gemini is considered to be the twins of the zodiac, although I believe that they are two brothers that are actually very different from each other in most ways, but are having to keep aligned to maintain balance. You know, Gemini is an air sign and can be very detached emotionally. And in this instance, with our sun and moon in conjunction to the goddess Vesta, is all about leading us into our spiritual truths about our past, our present, and our future. This means that many will be forced to let go of previous expectations or concepts, either put on them by other people or just what they've put on themselves. So expressing our emotions at this time can either be inhibiting or overflowing, depending on where we're at with our situations. You know, there has been a lot of purging going on all year. Well, for the last few years, but this year it's escalated. And for some, there's still a little bit more to do. And the advice is just to go with the flow and let things happen. So transformation is the key theme this year. And I strongly feel that a mass rebirth will take place on or leading up to the Jupiter-Saturn exact conjunction taking place on the 21st of December. The South Node will move into Ophiuchus on the 2nd of September, and the full moon lunar eclipse will occur in Taurus, whilst our Sun will be in the sign of Ophiuchus on the 30th of November. And the new moon solar eclipse that will take place in Ophiuchus will be on the 14th of December. So the Ophiucan energy will be very strong for the rest of this year, which also shows an ending of a major cycle. And the numerological 5, or the universal 5 year, will be very strong from this point onwards. So like last year, the 3 energy was strong right the way through to the end of the year. But the 4 energy this year is very much transforming a lot quicker into the 5 energy this year. So I really do feel that's because of the Ophiucan energy, because, you know, the star sign Ophiuchus, she's very, very active from June onwards. So from the beginning of June onwards, her energy is going to be very, very active throughout the eclipses, throughout the conjunctions, throughout the Lionsgate portal, etc. So last year, around the Lionsgate portal, I kept seeing the 13 crystal skulls in my mind's eye. In my vision, they were all lit up along the spine of the rod in the caduceus I use as my symbol for my true lifetime sky work. You know, and I was aware at the time that these 13 crystal skulls were connected to the 13 chakra system, but wasn't sure what it was all about. But it's all kind of started to make sense to me lately, because at the time I wasn't fully aware of just how strong the Ophiucan energy was going to be in this latter half of the year. You know, we've all been talking about the rise of the phoenix over the last few years, but I really do feel that this December is going to be major when it comes to the phoenix energy. And It's all about swings and roundabouts right now. And we must trust that only we ourselves can navigate what is best for us as individuals. It's time to break free of old programming that is no longer about stepping outside of the box. It's about realizing that we're already outside of the box and are having to make some important decisions about what direction to take. And that is where the problem lies, because the Ophiuchian energy is multidimensional. So many of us are going to feel a little bit lost or uncomfortable for, a little while. So I am highly recommending a technique that I've known about for quite some years now, and it's called the Metamorphic technique. I'm sure I've mentioned it before, but I just feel the timing for that right now is very relevant. If you look at the word metamorphic, I mean, that alone will tell you what it represents. And how it works is a little bit similar to reflexology, except with reflexology, you just work on the feet and what area represents what organ in your body or limbs. Whereas the metamorphic technique, you only work on the inner side of the foot and ankle, so the big toe down to the ankle, and the same on the inner sides of the hands, like along the thumb, and on the back of the head, right on the ridge. But I'll link some videos below for more information on the metamorphic technique. I mean, it's deeply healing. This technique was designed to clear the spine of emotional blocks. And, they say as we go through life, like all the traumas or emotional distraught that we go through gets trapped in the spine. And that restricts our life force from moving forward. And, obviously our energy flow. So, the metamorphic technique actually clears our old wounds and old emotional blocks that we have also probably inherited through our ancestry lines as well, not just in our own lives. And, so it clears the ancestry line as well, this technique, especially along the lines of the mother. I discovered this system in 1992 and it proved to be a very powerful healing tool for me at that time. And again, over the recent years. So this is especially helpful to allow the Kundalini energy to flow. And it really does kickstart the life force to venture into new horizons. So yeah, I'll link some videos below to that. So Neptune will start his retrograde mode on the 23rd of June. And he will start that at 23 degrees in Aquarius. So again, we have a 5-5 energy there. Neptune will be in trine to the Moon and Mercury retrograde. He will also be in square to Venus retrograde and in sextile to both Jupiter and Pluto. So these aspects will give power to a higher spiritual vision and empathy. So we must beware of taking on too much at that time. And again, live in the present moment. Many will be experiencing a lot of psychic downloads, while others could be building castles in the sky. So it's important that whilst being in seventh heaven, we don't forget to keep our 2 feet on the ground. So grounding techniques will be beneficial too throughout Neptune's retrograde. And that way, any spiritual visions or spiritual insights that come in will be more easily digested. and Jupiter and Pluto will come into the second of their 3 exact conjunctions in Sagittarius on the 30th of June. But they will be conjuncting in retrograde. You know, the last one took place when the planets were in forward motion on the 5th of April this year, which was the day after the 444 portal. So because retrogrades are more about introspection, I feel that this conjunction will take us back to the beginning of April in some way, on whatever was occurring at that time, either personally or collectively. Or it could be a completion or a continuation of something that was started around that time. So this is going to be quite a round off to this month's end as we enter into July. And I would say that if we are grounded and pretty stable throughout that time, then we can achieve a lot of satisfaction, especially when it comes to our craft. But for those that are still caught up in heavy loads, you know, especially when it comes to relationships, either globally, socially or intimate, then it's likely that the heat will be on. You know, power struggles and conflict may be very dominant at this time. You know, open-mindedness will definitely be needed, as well as self-responsibility. You know, we have 2 powerful T-squares on that day, as well as a kite, all involving a mixture of powerful planetary energies. So it's likely to feel like a bit of a roller coaster ride for many. And again, the advice is just go with the flow and not to get caught up in the hype. Although that's easier said than done when you're in the thick of it. So we must take time out for relaxation and fresh air. And, you know, for many, when it comes to relationships, it will be a make or break time. So change is never an easy process, especially when it's happening both inwardly and externally at the same time. And for as long as we can admit that change is needed, then the more rewarding it will be. It's time to take a stand on the side of truth and justice by using our spiritual strength, not necessarily our physical strength. So stay in peace. Much love.